All right. Good morning. Clap your hands once you can hear my voice. Give me some thumb feedback, please, on how this warm-up went. All right, so we're a little bit all over the place. Not bad overall. We're gonna move this thing. Let's go ahead and talk about it. I think season 4 of Rick and Morty premieres tonight, also. Okay, make an HTML file. Hey, we have an HTML file already made here, so that's pretty convenient. Right, so we can start our HTML. Is it gonna help me with my tagging? Yeah, I was hoping it would just do it, but okay. What's going on here?
That was happening to
Okay. Actually, it's like frozen. There we go. Oh, okay, well, that's super annoying. Okay. Doc type. And I have to add HTML in here. And then we can do HTML. Is it really going to be like this? And okay, so we'll say we have the head. I'm not going to add a title right now because that's annoying me. We can add a body. And what did it tell us that we need to have in here? So we need a script tag, and we also needed an input and a submit button. So I'm going to go ahead and do those first. So for my input, I'm going to have a label still, so that it's easier for like screen readers and accessibility, even though for some reason VS Code is not helping me at all. So I can either give my label a for tag and point to an ID of something else, so it says which label this is for, or I can nest what I want inside of it. So I'm going to go ahead and put my input. What's my type of my input? Yeah. Perfect. And label, let's go ahead and say text in here. And then let's go ahead and add a submit button as well. Do we want to do it in the input version or just the button version? Okay, I heard somebody whisper button, specifically Geisha. So we'll say button, and we can just say submit. Questions so far? All right, hopefully not too bad. Let's go ahead and open this. So I'm just going to copy the path. Whoa, okay. So I can right click, say copy path, and then I'm going to go to a different screen where I'll make my window. Command V, enter, and we have our screen. So I know I'm going to be programming today, so I'm going to go ahead and do Command Option I. Right? Remember, if you call me over and your console's not open, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is open your console. Right? This is like always going to be open. This is where the error messages show up. It's what the plants crave. Okay? And we can type in here. That's good, but nothing's going to happen because we haven't said anything to happen yet. Fair? Okay, so the next thing it says is we need to add a script file to a JS page. So we're going to go up in here. I'm going to add a script. Slash script. Sorry? Is it? Oh, it's helping me now?
No, it's insane.
Oh, yeah. That's all right. And right, we need a source to point to which file. Remember, that's src for source. And then we're going to say /from line index .js, because that's what I named my file. And we can go ahead and open that as well. Index.js. Right, I've opened that file just by doing Command T and then typing in the name of the file I was looking for and selecting it. So the first thing I want to do is test to make sure that my file is actually hooked up correctly. Right? If you're not doing this step, I'm not going to do anything for me. Then you're not checking your code enough. Because I don't want to get into debugging and then just realize that my code's not even running. Yeah?
You need to close your input type. You do it, you did it, but nobody did it in the lab.
Oh, okay.
So can we make it like stress for everybody? It will throw errors with modern HTML, not because the input type.
Yeah.
So you need to close it like correctly. That's the correct way.
Yeah, if your tag is self-closing, then it should close. Even though it's not throwing an error where you are right now, it could throw an error later. Thank you, good catch.
So input doesn't need another input closing tag?
Nope, it won't work that way. Yeah, it's self-closing. Okay, so I'm going to refresh, and I'll see that hello is written. All right, so you should always test this first, right? It's happened a few times already where I've been called over to debug, the function's not working, and then we realize that the file's not actually even connected. So don't do that because that also wastes my time, because you can find out if it's connected first, and we'll spend a lot of time debugging before realizing it's not connected. Okay, so it's supposed to do something. Okay. We'll enter a string if the input field should have only odd index characters. So there's a couple different ways to do this, so we're going to do them both ways. Right? So there's the way that is currently written in the lesson, where we give this button like a property called onClick, and then we say in quotes the name of a function that we want fired. So I'm going to say only odds. Close enough, right? And I invoke it, but it's still in quotes. It's kind of like unusual syntax. Not something you'll actually do a lot in your programming life, but just something to see. And so then in here, we can go ahead and create that function. So I'm going to say const only odds. Doesn't take in any arguments, and it's an anonymous function. And so when this runs, I need to go do something. Can anybody tell me like what the overall strategy should be like? Yeah, Will?
You have to move through the string
Loop through the string.
and identify the odds strings by index modulo 2 equals 1. Equals 1, yeah, right?
Yep.
And then all those things will return into 100%.
Excellent. So what problem does this kind of remind you of? What one? Disavow, right? I mean, we're not saying if it doesn't include, but we're still doing one condition and then updating a result string. It's essentially the exact same problem. Right, so it's super important, again, like try to look for those pattern recognitions. We've already solved this problem about 30 times. Hopefully you've solved it even more if you were working on it on your own, right? So at this point, it should be like pretty, like, oh, okay, we need to have an output. I need to grab that actual element. So there's a slight change, right? How do I grab the element? Document, okay, I've heard it from a couple places. Yeah, document.query selector, right? I could also do grab element by ID. I don't currently have an ID on here, so we definitely have to do query selector. What do I want to put in here? So the hashtag, just so you know, actually refers specifically to elements with IDs. The reason query selector is better than get element by ID is because there's a little bit more flexibility. So because my index at HTML, if my VS Code will let me do it, it only has one button. I could technically just write button in here because it's going to go out and grab, well, not the button, I don't want the button, sorry. I only have one input, right? I can go out and grab that one input by just putting it in there. But usually, you have more than one element on, like I might have more than one input on the page. So because I have more than one input, I'll add an ID and then I'll just grab that instead. So we can say string or something, and then in our JS, we can update that to the octothorpe and string. Right, so now I actually have my string element. And I also want to just isolate my string. So for that, I'm going to do string element dot value. So inputs have a value associated with them to whatever's inside of them. They don't have an inner text, nor do they have an inner HTML, because they are self-closing tags. Right? If it's self-closing, how could anything be inside of it? Right? So all they have is a value. So then the rest of this logic is very much like our disavow, where we say for let I equals 0. I'm not going to loop by character, though, because I care about the index. I is less than string.length, I plus plus, and then we'll just say if string, or if I, right? If I modulo 2. I could say equal to 1, but I modulo 2 is either going to be 1 or 0, which is truthy or falsy. So I'm just I can leave it at just that. I can do output plus equals string add I. Right, that should be all of like the main logic. And then at the very end, we would usually be returning our new output. But what do we want to do instead? Right, we want to put it back on the input. So currently the input's called what? String element. And then how do I reassign its value? Dot value, right? I have to actually access the key. Right, you can think of that whole element as like a type of object with keys or properties or attributes, right? All interchangeable words. And so by saying at this key of value, I want to assign it to this new value, which will be output. And we'll save it. And we're long overdue to run our code. So we'll refresh. Hello. And click submit. And it freaks out. So output is not defined. Great. So that sounds like a spelling error. Output. Let's see if it's saving. It's like very slow to respond right now. Try again. And it shortens to L. So now it is working. Cool. Questions on that one? Right, so this is essentially the disavow problem, but just updating a specific element instead of returning and taking in a string. Yeah, not much going on the HTML page. We've got just this on click on the button that has the value of this function being fired. right? Notice it is in parentheses, quotes, so that's kind of weird, but it would work. Yeah, Shia?
If we add the semicolons to the end of the lines like we do in when we're writing
For HTML?
Yeah.
No, we don't do that.
Okay.
Good
So maybe
question.
that's-
Yep. Because we are looking at odd indices. That's what the problem. That's what the problem specifically declared. Odd index characters. So we're looking at the index. If we do string at I, we'll get the character. We only care about the index. Brandon. In the what one? They're both index. The JS? Okay. If I do it here, you're saying? Okay, great. Great question. So what Brandon says is, hey, couldn't I just say dot value up here and have the same thing? Well, yes and no. So yes, I could do that, but then down here, I have to grab the element again. Right, I want to actually just go in and grab the element one time. That's better practice. So, although it might not be super expensive to grab one element, like expensive as in like time and energy for the code to run, it depends on the element, right? It could have all these like tons and tons of children, nested elements. So if you're going to go in and grab something, you really only want to grab it one time if you can. So because of that, I want to actually have access to this input the whole time. And so if I do this, right, this evaluates to a string, so then you only have the string. It's like having an object here, let person, and I say name, and I point it, name pointing it to Corey, should be a string. Right, and then if I had a thing called like name, and I said person.name, my name right now isn't the object, right? It's just some string. It's whatever that value was. It's the same thing up here. So if we key into it at value, then all of a sudden we just have the string, which is not what we want because I want to also update the object down here. So I'll need it in two places. It's a good question. Any other question? Yeah, Kiara. The only what? Sounds like it's not connected correctly. Have you successfully console logged something from your JavaScript file? Maybe there's a spelling error. I might have to ask someone in the back. Ashia.
Just trying to understand a little bit better. So line 3 is the user's input.
Line 3 is the actual element itself. All right, let's go take a look. Debugger. Let's save it. Go back here, refresh, type in hello, submit, and we can see it's actually string element is this input itself with all of these keys. This line 4, where I've taken the value from our string element, that's what they put in. So if I actually string element, enter, we can see it's literally this input. Just happens to have the value property associated to it. Doug.
But elements being put inside, or for any value being put inside the input, like hello, should you validate it in the HTML or should it be validated in JavaScript?
Validated.
Like, let's say like you put in, like if you delete hello and it's nothing, there's nothing there.
You would do that. You would probably validate that through the JavaScript. Yep. It is working because we are doing this on click here, and we won't ever see this button until it's already been loaded. And the JavaScript file runs way up here. So the JavaScript file runs quick, and then we won't have any chance of calling on it until the JavaScript file already exists. Right, so this is the first way of solving it. Yeah, Shia.
What's the purpose of really doing a JS file if we could do that information inside of?
Because your websites will have a lot more JavaScript than one function. Good question. The question was why do we separate it? It's kind of like the hangman game, right? We can make the hangman game right in here, but if we put them all in one file, it's just going to look insane. We want to be able to separate it. Easier to debug, easier to read for other people. We want it to be really organized. No, thank you. Maybe later. I love watching hoarders. The show, not that Deja's a hoarder. I don't know her. I've never been to her house. Maybe she is. I don't know. There's nothing wrong with it, except for a slight mental condition. Okay. So this is one way, right? Hopefully, you're going to have a lot of time to practice this way. Again, we're going to continue to work on the labs after this. I want to show the other way. So the other way, yeah, I'm going to comment out. I'm going to duplicate and then comment so that we don't lose it. Is I'm not going to have an on-click here. This is the way you see more code usually written if it's not really kind of old. And so instead of that, I'm not going to use this for now. Okay, so I'm just going to start down here. So for this, we need the content to load. So this is going to be an event listener, which I know we haven't learned like a super lot, but we've learned a little. So the first one we need to know about is waiting for all the content to load. So we're going to say document.add event listener. Listener. Let me know if I spell it wrong. Usually I have it help me. And then we're going to listen for DOM content loaded, because we want all of the content to load so that we can grab elements off of that content, off of the DOM. So that's the first listener it takes in. The next thing it takes in is a callback function. For now, it can be an anonymous function. And now I've got my own space to write some code in. So first thing I would do, actually, and I will do it, is I'm just going to console log hello to make sure that I've spelled everything correctly in document.add event listener and that it's working. So we're going to go back to this code, refresh, and I see my hello is there. So I know that this is firing after the content has loaded. Great. Does that make sense that how I'm testing that? Okay. Because the last thing you want to do is write a bunch of code in here and then realize in a half hour that you misspelled that event listener. And you go, it's never running. I don't get it. It's never running. Or you've misspelled loaded, and it's like, well, it never was running. Okay, so for this one, we can do a couple things. But yeah, so we're going to add a listener to the actual button instead. So instead of writing on-click as a property for that button, we're going to go on and grab that button and then add an event. So I'm going to just give this button an ID for us. I'm going to say ID equals submit button. I'll copy that because I know VS Code for some reason not helping me today. I probably just have to restart it. I'm sure it'll take 2 minutes to debug. Okay, anyway, and so we can go on and grab it. So we're going to say let submit button, and we're going to go ahead and grab that. So I'm going to say document.query selector octothorpe submit button. Okay, so now I actually have that button, and we can prove it. So we should check it. So I'm going to throw in a debugger. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to refresh the page. It's going to freeze right under that line. Go to my console, and I'm going to type in submit button and make sure, okay, I really do have the button. Cool. All right, this is just me checking along the way so that I don't have to spend any time debugging later. Okay, great. So now that we've got the button, let's go ahead and add an event to it. So I'm going to say submit button, because this is the element that we have, and we're going to add event listener. And what's the event we're going to listen for on this one? Click, right? We want to wait for the user to actually click that element. So we say, okay, when the user clicks this button, we want to fire this other function. So I'm going to make this an anonymous function. And now here, I'm going to do all of the same logic, essentially. I'm going to copy all of this, and I'm going to paste it into here. So I'm going to say let output equal there. I'm going to grab my string element. I'm going to get the actual string from the element. I'm going to remove the debugger. I'm going to say my for loop. I'm going to iterate through that string. And then I'm going to reassign the element. So it's the same, essentially the same meat and potatoes. It's just I put a listener on that actual element instead of putting the on-click property on the submit button itself. Okay, so I've saved this, and I can refresh it. Type in hello, and it works. Right, so this logic in here is all identical. So it's so identical, in fact, that instead of having this, right, this is the anonymous function, correct? But we've already got the function created up here, right? So why create it again? Right? So instead, on the click, let's just go ahead and call only odds. Right? I don't invoke it because this function, this is a callback, right? So you pass the whole function. It will call it after there's a click. And we'll test it again to make sure that I'm not full of crap. And it works. I think I threw in an extra L. Right, so this is the second way that we could do it. Yeah, Dan.
So, this way is supposed to be better than the on-click
This is the way you tend to see code, like JavaScript code read more often. At this specific stage in the game, it won't really matter. You're welcome to do either one for this lab. See now. There's what? I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Yep. Document that. Yeah. So this DOM content loaded is going to wrap everything. So you don't, as long as you're good. Yeah. So I think the question is if we have multiple event listeners on the page, do they all go inside of this document.addEventListener DOM content loaded? And the answer is yes. Because we want all of the content to be loaded so that we can grab the specific elements from the HTML. Without that, our content won't be loaded, so we'll just be grabbing things and it will come back undefined. Yep. Does it have to be in order? No, there's no order. I mean, JavaScript runs top to bottom. HTML runs top to bottom. But we don't know which order the user will click on things and stuff. So it won't matter. We'll just fire different functions. Oh my god, the fan on my computer is like so loud. Any other questions on that? Yeah.
When you go back to the you said that JavaScript uses multiple like the click and then the function without invoking it, or without the functionality.
Right here?
Yeah. We need to put on like the work that we earlier for putting like we need to put the function out, the brackets, or this way.
This is fine. It's defined up here. Nice and clean. I could also have written it inside. Either way. Sure. Right, so HTML is not doing too much, just an input and a button. But we do have another button also that's being commented out that allowed us to do that on click earlier. Right, I can comment it back in. Then we'll just have two buttons. Right, but they'll both do the exact same thing. See? Just look silly. Okay, so I think that's all of like the